What's up, YouTube? This is the 82 and 0 podcast. Okay, so for this episode of a historic what if matchup, okay, the 1967 Philadelphia 76ers versus the 1987 Los Angeles Lakers. These are two all-time great historic teams, and I don't hear them get compared a whole lot. You know, most people, they'll bring up Bulls versus Lakers or 2001 Lakers versus Warriors, but I haven't really seen anyone do a video on this, and I thought it'd be a fun topic to cover. And it's all opinion, so if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You know, it's impossible to guess accurately two different teams from two different eras playing each other, but it's a fun thing to look at. So we'll dive in. 1967 Philadelphia 76ers. So, for those of you who don't know, they had the original greatest record of all time, which would be beaten by the 72 Lakers, then later the 96 Bulls, then later the 2016 Warriors. So they went 68-13. And they were coached by Alex Hannum, which he's one of the greatest coaches of that generation. And this was the first time the Boston Celtics have lost in 8 years. So Wilt Chamberlain would correct his wrongs, you know, because he would always come up short against Bill Russell and the Celtics. And this time he defeated Bill Russell and the Celtics. And I don't mean just beat them, he beat them 4-1. This is considered probably, you know, some people will say the 65 Celtics. Some people say 72 Lakers. But this is probably considered the best NBA team in the first 25 years of NBA history. It had Wilt Chamberlain at his absolute peak, MVP. This is when Alex Hannum convinced Wilt to quit scoring so much and get his teams involved. So he'd put up 7-point assists per game on top of 24.1 points per game and 24 rebounds per game. Now the team was deep. They had Hal Greer at the shooting guard, who averaged 22 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists. They had Chet Walker, 19 points and 8 rebounds. Billy Cunningham, 18 points and 7 rebounds. Wally Jones at the point guard. He was a great defensive point guard. They had Luke Jackson at power forward. Very strong player. 12 points, 8 rebounds. I should say 8.9, so almost 9. They had a veteran in Larry Costello. Bob Wise was there. Matt Guokas. It was a deep team. And they were the third best defensive rated team in the NBA at the time and the first best offense. Now, the 87 Lakers. This would be the Lakers' 4th championship in the 80s, and this is their best championship run in the 1980s decade. They went 65-17. They were coached by Pat Riley. Their executive was Jerry West. And many people consider this the greatest offensive team of all time. And they had the 7th best defensive rating in the NBA that year. And they went back to the finals that year, and they defeated the Boston Celtics, who had embarrassed them back in 84. So this time, they were up 2-1 in terms of the Bird Magic matchups. And this is Magic Johnson at his absolute peak. 23 points per game, 6 rebounds, 12 assists. James Worthy had 19 points per game. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had 17 points per game. Byron Scott had 17 points. AC Green had 10 points and 7.8 rebounds. Michael Cooper, who was a defensive player of the year, had 10 points, and he was a good 3-and-D guy. They had Michael Thompson off the bench, who was a great post scorer and post defender. Then they had guys with high energy like Kurt Rambis and Billy Thompson. So I think these teams are very comparable, and I don't see this get brought up a lot. I like seeing this matchup. So how I'm going to compare them, it's pretty hard to do because their eras are so different. And even the 80s Lakers team, their era is so different from today. They only attempted 5 3-pointers a game, and they only made 2 3-pointers a game. So, or I'm sorry, 2.4 3-pointers made per game. So, you can't really judge the 67 76ers because they didn't have a 3-point line. And I don't think it's that big of a deal because let's say we have a best of 7 series, right? Let's say we go to the finals. Are we putting them in a scenario where it's 87 Lakers go back and play by the 67 rules? You know, where there's no 3-point line, or are we doing it like there is a 3-point line? So this is a topic that's what makes it so hard to debate different eras. But I'm going to use the argument of 67 76ers go in and play the 87 Lakers in the 87 Lakers era rules. So there will be a 3-point line. And I don't think people realize, despite their era differences, how comparable these teams were. These were really great offensive teams. So the 67 76ers, they averaged 121.7 points per game, and the 87 Lakers averaged 120.6 points per game. You know, they didn't keep track of steals and blocks, but we obviously know that the 67 76ers, they had good shot blockers and Wilt Chamberlain. And for the regular season averages, I was talking about points per game in the playoffs. For the regular season, the 67 76ers averaged 125.2 points per game compared to the 87 Lakers 117.8. So, as you can see, the Lakers stepped it up in the playoffs that year. So, let's say in a hypothetical situation, a best of 7 series, you know the Lakers are going to bring their A game. And these are two very comparable offensive-minded teams. So, I look at it like this. I look at the matchups. The 87 Lakers have 3 Hall of Famers. They got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, James Worthy. The Hall of Famers on the Sixers are Wilt Chamberlain, Billy Cunningham, Hal Greer, and Chet Walker. Now, the matchup down low isn't really fair because Kareem is 39 years old. Although he's still a contributing factor, this isn't the Kareem from 1971. This is a pretty old and busted up Kareem. I'm not saying he can't play. I'm saying he wasn't as efficient on the defensive end as he used to be. So I think Wilt is going to give him trouble down low. And one thing you got to understand about Kareem in his career, one thing he was criticized about, he didn't like to play physical. So Wilt, obviously the two matched up when Wilt was past his prime, but now this is different. This is Wilt in his prime matched up against Kareem past his prime. So I'd say Kareem, he'd get his ass handed to him down low. Wilt was averaging 24 rebounds per game compared to Kareem's 6. And I know, I get it. A lot of it has to do with the fact that there was a lot of other good rebounders on the team. But 6 rebounds as a 7'2" center is not very good. So I think Kareem takes that matchup. Then you look at the power forward matchup where you have, Luke Jackson, 6'9" power forward, 12 point, 8.9 rebounds versus AC Green. And I'd really like to see that matchup because I compare these players a lot. AC Green obviously was an Iron Man. He hardly ever missed any games in his career. And Luke Jackson, he retired early because of knee injuries. But these two played very similar. They were very strong, dirty players, great rebounders, defense first minded. Although I'm going to give the edge to AC Green here, And at the small forward lineup, this is where it gets tricky. Because the 76ers, they have two great small forwards. They got Billy Cunningham and Chet Walker. So I give them the edge over James Worthy. Even though James Worthy is a better player than both of them, they don't have another Hall of Fame small forward coming off the bench. So when you have two Hall of Fame small forwards, and on top of that, Billy Cunningham is a really good defender. So is Chet Walker. They're great defenders, great rebounders. Then you go to the shooting guard matchup. Hal Greer versus Byron Scott. I do think Hal Greer would be able to be an efficient three-point shooter. I could see him putting up like 39-40% from three. And obviously he takes the edge over Byron Scott. But I think the Lakers win it overall at the shooting guard matchup because they have Michael Cooper coming off the bench. And he was the defensive player of the year. So I think they win that edge because they got Byron Scott, who's a 3-and-D guy, and Michael Cooper, who's a 3-and-D guy. And at the point guard matchup, no question, Magic Johnson versus, the 76ers point guard, who's way shorter. Wally Jones, although he's a great defender, he didn't have the height, I don't think, to match up with Magic. I mean, Wally Jones was only 6'2", and Magic was 6'9". I think he's really gonna struggle against Magic Johnson. So here's how I see it playing out. Like I said, it's all gonna matter on the matchups and how they play it. And Alex Hannum is a very intelligent coach. I think he could figure out how to push the pace of the game. Just like the Showtime Lakers, they pushed the pace. They tried to be as fast as possible. I think, and you got to understand Wilt's endurance. He played 45 minutes a game. He's not going to have any issue playing all these minutes. So here's how I can see it going down. I think Philly could win it if Wilt controls the boards and he controls it down low, and he gets his side shooters involved. If he's double teamed down low, throw it out to your shooters, throw it out to a Billy Cunningham, throw it out to a Hal Greer, and I could see going in the Lakers' favor if Magic Johnson takes over in that series. So the thing about Magic is, who's really going to stop Magic on that Sixers team? They don't have a good enough perimeter defender to match up. And if you look at how Magic did in the finals that year against the Celtics, right? He put up 26 points, 8 rebounds, 13 assists, 2.3 steals on 54% from the field, 50% from 3, and 96% from the free throw line. If he puts up these kind of numbers, how are the Sixers going to stop him in the backcourt? Hal Greer's not going to stop him. Wally Jones isn't going to stop him. So I think the Lakers win it if Magic can have those performances the whole game, every game. So my prediction is it's going to be very, very close. And I think no game is going to be a blowout. These are two very well-matched teams. But I think the 87 Lakers would win it in game 6 or 7. That's my prediction. Let me know what you guys think down below. Thanks for watching.